Hello, and welcome. It is Monday, December 7th, 2020, and this is Truly News. As we begin this new day, let's start by increasing your knowledge and expanding your insights with a review of today's news. As always, we begin with a look at the top stories from around the country. And here are the stories that are leading the news today. Today's headlines: Biden announces health secretary. Michigan official threatened. California lockdown. Environmental issues. President-elect Biden has announced the California Attorney General Xavier Becerra will be his choice for Secretary of Health and Human Services. The former congressman has an understanding of the political workings in Washington, which should help the Biden administration navigate the contentious political environment as they roll out new policies. The Michigan Secretary of State reports that armed protesters gathered outside of her home on Saturday. This is the latest in many reports of harassment from election officials across the country. The threats are fueled by the dangerous and baseless claims by Donald Trump that Biden won due to widespread fraud among election officials. At midnight on Sunday, the state of California entered one of its strictest and most widespread COVID shutdowns. The governor ordered the lockdowns, which will take place on a regional basis as hospitals reach critical levels. The announcement has met some resistance, including some sheriff's offices that refuse to enforce the order. Trump spent 4 years dismantling long-standing environmental protection policies. Now, environmental groups are gearing up to work with the Biden administration on a number of issues. The primary focus is on reversing policies that promoted fossil fuels and portrayed renewable energy as a bad investment and even dangerous. And that's your top news for today. Now, in our look beyond the main headlines, let's begin with the latest advances in science, technology, and space exploration. In science news, archaeologists debate the earliest time when humans arrived in America. A report in the Journal of Archaeological Science claims that new evidence supports a theory that humans arrived in the Americas 130,000 years ago. That claim was first made in 2017, based on fossil evidence that seemed to show cut marks on fossilized bones, which dated back to the period. The claim was controversial because previous evidence pointed to human arrival only 30,000 years ago. In technology news, HBO Max may be available as an app on Roku soon. HBO Max is still not available as an app on the popular Roku streaming hardware. HBO Max launched in May of this year, offering a catalog of movies from Warner Media. The service is the latest of many to compete in the streaming content industry, which has grown rapidly. As new offers have arisen, services like Roku and Amazon have fought for the right to carry the service apps. In space news, over the weekend, another rocket launch delivered supplies to the space station. On Sunday, a SpaceX rocket launched over 6,000 pounds of supplies to the International Space Station. The successful launch took place at Kennedy Space Center, and the Falcon 9 rocket delivered its capsule to space and returned the main rocket to Earth for reuse. The supplies carried on the rocket included equipment for new science investigations, a new airlock, and other supplies. And that is your science, technology, and space news for today. Now we look at the latest in health, social, and environmental news. In health news, a baby is born after being frozen as an embryo 27 years ago. A baby has been born who was the result of an embryo that was frozen for 27 years. Molly, a healthy baby girl, was born in October. She was the result of the in vitro fertilization by another couple who donated the embryo to Molly's parents. The embryo, which is the early stage of human development after fertilization, was frozen back in 1992 and thawed out earlier this year to be implanted for the pregnancy. In social news, urban growth and social improvements outpace advances in the suburbs. Research, published by the Pew Research Center, shows that the core urban areas within cities have been growing much more rapidly than suburban areas. The growth is not limited to revitalization and increasing population. Other demographics, such as education, income, and home values, have seen greater improvements in urban versus suburban areas. This follows a trend that began 20 years ago. In environmental news, Trump continues to dismantle environmental protections. During his final days in office, President Donald Trump continues to pass regulations that allow for businesses' interests to threaten existing environmental protections. His latest announcement involves turning over 2,400 acres in Arizona for copper mining. The mining would destroy the habitat in the area, which also contains religious and cultural sites that are sacred to Native Americans. And that is your health, social, and environmental news for today. Now, it is time for our look at economic and world news. In economic news, the United States has a massive trade deficit as China announces a record trade surplus. As the trade deficit in the United States grew to $63 billion per month in October, the trade surplus in China showed record growth. A trade deficit means that a country is buying more goods than it sells, and a surplus means the opposite. In November, China announced that exports were up 21% over the previous year as demand for Chinese goods continues to increase. China has a trade surplus of $75 billion a month. In world news, the United Kingdom begins the world's first COVID vaccinations this week. This week will mark a major milestone in the pandemic as the United Kingdom becomes the first to begin administering a COVID vaccine. The world will be watching as doses of the vaccine, which was developed by Pfizer and BioNTech, are delivered and administered starting on Tuesday. The vaccine requires 2 doses, which are administered 3 weeks apart. Trials of the vaccine showed a 95% success rate. And that is your economic and world news for today. To wrap things up, we take a look at your entertainment options with newly released movies, shows, and books. In newly released movies, today's movie is Allies. A psychiatrist and a nurse try to help a catatonic woman at a state hospital. Allies is now available for rent on various streaming services. In newly released shows, today's show is Trial 4. Charged as a teenager in the 1993 killing of a Boston police officer, Sean Ellis fights to prove his innocence, exposing corruption and racism. Episodes of Trial 4 are now showing on Netflix. Finally, in entertainment news, our newly published book is Deadly Cross by James Patterson, the 28th book in the Alex Cross series. An investigation of a double homicide sends Alex Cross to Alabama. This book is presently numbered 2 on the New York Times fiction bestseller list. And that is your entertainment news for today. To see today's new movie, show, and book, or to browse our previous reviews, visit the Truly News Daily Print Edition. The print edition is available at trulynews.org. There you will find all of today's news, with archives of past news that is searchable by subject. As always, we end our podcast with hope for humanity, stories about the goodness and kindness people show each other every day. And here is today's story. From Tip City, Ohio. Kindness makes a difference in Miami County. After a career working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Pamela Hale worked part-time at a nonprofit as part of her retirement. The small nonprofit had to lay off staff when COVID struck, which left Pam with time on her hands. Believing in the power of individuals to make a difference, she decided to start her own nonprofit effort. After losing a friend to cancer, she turned her focus to supportive gift bags for cancer patients. Her simple act of giving has been a great show of care and support to those struggling with illness during an especially difficult time. And that is your news for 44,172. Have a wonderful day.